small video. I found this video very interesting. It shows a branch, like a future branch, or how the French, or a technology-enabled branch. And it will also show you what technology can help branches, or our branches, to become more, let's say, interacting with, with your customers. So we'll start with this. Then I'll talk about the trends that are shaping the banking, let's say, future, and what are the threats, but also what are the key challenges, because all of that is great, but where the money is made, and what is it that will secure that in the future, in 10 years from now, okay, we are there and we are making what we are supposed to be making. Can we run the video? So, this was a video that I got in 2007. This was 2007, 6 years ago, at a conference in the US. Just to illustrate what technology could do. Actually, most of the technologies that you, Brad, talked about are already in that, in that clip, right? So the Uber, like the lady paying the taxi without even, kind of using cash, and so forth. The leveraging big data to predict what is the best product to buy, and so forth. So I will ask you a question before going to my presentation. How many of you think that by 2020 we will have one branch like this in Ukraine? One? How many? 1, 2, 3, 4? One branch, only one branch. 4 people think that we will have one branch like this in Ukraine. Okay. Well, that's not very encouraging, is it? The thing is that, these technologies are readily available. They're here to be used. A lot of banks are thinking about how to leverage them best, but there are some issues with regards of how to make that work with the current infrastructure of banking. Now, what we have seen here we have seen a number of trends in this video. One is the changing consumer. Consumers are changing, and most of Brett's presentation was about the the changes of these consumers. I'm going to show you some numbers. I'm a McKinsey person. I have to show you some numbers. It will be less pictures. It will be a bit more numbers. The second point was about online. The world is going online. I love that little kid trying to kind of swipe the paper magazine, kind of saying, why is it not moving? Actually, my son, who is like 1 year, cannot live without the iPad, right? Just like wants to swipe all the time on the iPad and look, Believe it or not, he's 1 year and he's able to know which icon to go to and to watch his, the movies that he likes. He's 1 year, okay? So indeed, Steve Jobs, is helping in creating the code in my little son. So online is changing the world. And big data is changing the world. But, I would like to finish with contrasting this with the reality of Ukraine. All of that is great. All of these trends are great. But will we ever see that in a big scale as we think it will be? Okay? So these are the four, I believe, the four key trends that are shaping the world. The digital revolution, the new customers, the fact that we're always online, and big data. Digital revolution, I think you know it. I'm sure more than half of the room checks emails just after waking up and just before getting to sleep. It's a very bad habit, but we do it. And as Brett was saying, I think by 2020 we will have about 80% of the world population with smartphones. So, and I believe that this fact alone is quite interesting, because it will make all of the relation mobile. The customers are changing. This is how fast people are adopting technologies now. The radio, it took the radio 38 years. It took the radio 38 years to reach 50 million users. It took the iPad less than a year to reach 50 million. The Samsung S3 took even less to reach 50 million users. Okay? This is how the world is changing. People are not willing to wait anymore. The waiting time in banking dropped 3 times in the last 7 years. That's a huge investment that bank has done, right? Because the customers are not willing to wait anymore. And then social media is playing now a very important role to help consumers decide and select the bank they want to work with, or the type of services they want to have. Actually, I don't know whether you know it, but Facebook, for instance, if you want to sell mortgages, okay, Facebook, you can go to Facebook, and then it's not that they sell you customer information, but what they do for customers who are changing status, so you are single, you become married, okay, they will push to them your mortgage offer, and you pay per view on, on that. This is how, advertising, and this is how getting to the customer is changing and using, social media. Also, the consumer journey is changing. Today, if you look at this gentleman who, and this is a normal day of a gentleman, there is a breadth of technologies you could be using to pay, to interact with the environment, not even going to a bank. Talking about, the NFC, talking about barcodes. Actually, there is, I'm not sure anymore, I think it's Tesco. The name is irrelevant. What they did is through a phone and a barcode system, okay, you can, in the metro, do your shopping in the morning. So what they did, they put a lot of pictures of the products, in the metro, like in the wagons. So you are going to your work, and you are there and say, okay, I want 1 kilo of cucumbers, and I want these 2 cans, and so forth, and you select what time you want this delivered to your home, okay? And then it's delivered to your home. And then the payment is automatically done. So that is indeed changing a bit the way consumers are interacting with their environment. Now that picture is scary. That picture is really scary. And it's especially scary for Robert. Because Robert loves branches. Now, what this picture is saying, and this is not like purely McKinsey view. It is based on surveys with over 40 banks and the EFMA. Okay, it says simply that about 93% of transactions are going to be entirely done not in a branch. 93%. We're not talking about 50-50, and this is by 2015. Okay, so that means that people are going to be 2/3 on the phone and internet, and I think by 2020 this also might significantly increase because it's much easier to do it on the on the phone. Okay, so what's going to be about the future of branches? What will the branches become? How many branches we will need? Now, we see that the online is very important, but what are banks doing in the online world? What are you doing in the online world? A lot. Some people are doing a lot, indeed. But on average, banks are not doing much in the online world. This is the top 200 iPhone financial applications as of August 2011. You see, non-banks have a higher share of applications than banks. Higher share of applications. All of them for free. All of them for free. Okay? All of the non-bank application you pay for. And there are many of them. We get innovations by the hour. Okay, in terms of banking, whether it's a microloan, whether it's about managing your finances, whether it's about payment, and so forth. There are zillions of innovations happening, and these are non-banks, capturing that space. Actually, we talk a lot about M-payment. I'm happy Brad talked about M-Pesa, okay? But I think the picture is far broader than this. I think the picture is far broader than this. Why? Because payment is only 1 billion in revenues, and that's old information. I think that could be exponentially growing. If you look at the full value chain, end to end, and understanding that the person or the company that has access or that owns the customer information is able to generate much more money from the selection of the services to the fulfillment of the transaction are the persons that are going to generate much more value. The ratio is 1 to 10. Okay, so today most of the organization are only thinking about what can I do with the with the banking service. But it would be great in the future if a bank could think of the lovely shoes that Brett showed in his presentation, to cut a deal with that merchant and tell you, I'm gonna bring that customer to you. If the transaction happened, I want to cut. That will be a very different banking. There are some innovations in the mostly in the payment world, but also in the credit. But these are not only banks. You see, Citi is doing this vignette trial. Google with their Android and then with glass are also trying to capture that space. But I mean, there are no winners yet. By the way, when you look at M-Pesa, I mean, it's great that, and indeed in Kenya, M-Pesa has like 50% penetration, but M-Pesa is not making money. You want to make money. M-Pesa is not making money. Actually, we've done a research. If you look at emerging markets, okay, the money is in lending. If you're not doing lending, you're not making money. Because when you think in terms of net income, the cost that will take you to make this transaction happen vis-a-vis the revenues will give you a cost to income that is close to 100. Okay? It's a very simple equation. So you pay for the infrastructure, you will have, and this is very close to what M-Pesa is. So it's not like about the profit. This was more of getting a fantastic service for an underbanked market, just a way of sending money between each other, which is something, by the way, that happens in Turkey, and which is something that some of the banks in the world now are trying to do in a different way. I encourage you to see what ANZ Go Money. You can look at their, YouTubes. So ANZ Go Money is basically making M-Pesa, but on the digital, online. Now, we talked about the big data explosions, about these exabytes. So exabytes is actually, it's a 1 billion gigabyte. It's very simple, 1 billion gigabytes, okay? It's a huge amount of information. Just for you to see, we will have between 2010 to 2020 about 30 times more information generated in the world. Now, think of this 35,000 exabyte and think up to maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago, we generated the humankind generated 5 exabytes. This is how much, the information is proliferating. Now, all the people are saying, or this is the most, commonly used arguments, that we at banks don't know what to use, or how to use data. Well, I would argue that you banks are the best positioned in the world to understand consumer behavior, because you have all their financial transactions, because they transact through your card. You have their personal information. You can track, connect all this information together and create algorithms to understand, how these customers would bank with you in the future. I think you are, greatly positioned to do that. But how many banks are doing it today? Very few, very few. Now, we talked about the emergence of non-banking player that will eat on your space, and this is increasing, and it's a real threat, because I believe personally that, the biggest threats for banks are going to be, the Googles of the world, or even telecom providers. Telecom providers are the ones who are in the pocket of their customers every day. Okay? Now imagine these guys coming in the value chain before you, and then, marginalizing you to become a utility provider. Imagine that happening. Actually, the cost to income of the banking industry altogether will shoot up to the 90%, because you become a utility. You're not the primary relation anymore with the customer. Now, all of that is great. All of these trends are superb, but we are in Ukraine, where, and it is a cash-based economy. I mean, 95% of transactions are still in cash. In Poland, I thought that this number would be much lower, okay? But then you discover in Poland that 50% of the transactions, are kind of, 50% of the transactions are made online. But out of this 50%, 70% of them are fulfilled with cash. There is something with this cash. People do not want to drop cash yet, in our region at least, okay? There is about $50 billion, more than twice the reserves of the central bank in cash, under mattresses, in your home, your home, your home, and your home. How can we talk about making a relation completely virtual, having all that cash around? If you are unable to fulfill from end to end a transaction, a very simple transaction, okay? If we still need that paper, that piece of paper that people trust because it has value. And I think that's one of the biggest diseases. Thanks God we don't have checks in Ukraine. Because checks, do you want to know how many hundreds of millions some of the Southern European countries are paying to get rid of checks? And after these hundreds of millions, all what they achieved is to achieve kind of 40% impact. That's it. Okay? So, that's a human nature. Okay? Cash is there. Second, talking about infrastructure. To do what we are talking about, I mean, you need to build infrastructure, not just the bank's infrastructure. It does not just belong to you. You need a proper mortgage cadastre. Of course, it is possible to do mortgages online. In 2007, ING DiBa in Germany did more mortgages online with zero branches than Deutsche Bank. 2007, I'm not talking about, you know, this will happen 2020 or 25. This is 2007. And we're talking about mortgages. I'm not talking about microloans. So it's possible. But for that, you need the infrastructure. ING DiBa, by the way, has zero branch, right? But you need the infrastructure for that. And you need, the infrastructure is beyond you. It needs to be a system infrastructure. And that is another question in Ukraine, actually. Not only in Ukraine, but in Ukraine is very valid. The customer behavior and trust. We talk about trust. Why do you believe that people in Ukraine have about 50 to 60 billion dollars in their, under mattresses? Do you think, is there something here about trust, that we need to engage? But we should also understand the Ukrainian people. Look, the 98 financial crisis was not that, far away, but people lost their shirts in the CIS. The devaluation, the huge devaluation that happened in 2008, Q4 2008 is not that, far. All the regulations with FX, and so forth are also very constrained. So guess what? I prefer to have $1,000 in my pocket under the mattress somewhere that I know that I will access, that the bank is not gonna default and so forth, rather than, putting it in hryvnia in the bank. Okay? And let's talk about Bank of its future with such people, behaving in that way. So, talk about regulations, talk about banking new operating model, talk about talent. Talk about talent in Ukraine. To do all what you are talking about, we need to apply new methods in banking, completely new methods. Whether the way to manage channels, the way we extract data, the way we put these algorithms together to, to make sense. So, how quickly to embrace the change is, I think, the key question to you. Because the infrastructure would suggest, look, don't worry, this is happening in long time from now, okay? Actually, only 4 of you believe that any of these trends are gonna get implemented. I know that some banks today have some thoughts about what to do and how to do, that Privat is introducing, glass, in Ukraine and so forth. But guess what? This is a Ukrainian phone. 90% of the time, For some reason, I don't have 3G on it. So, for this new banking to work, it's not just banks. You need the full infrastructure to work with it. That's why in the Netherlands it works. Why? Because in the Netherlands, all the system together is working like that. And as a result, the banking system as a whole is very different. Now, don't understand me wrong. I'm not saying you should be comfortable in your shoes and not do anything, because these are real threats. These are real threats to you. And these threats actually will be attacking 80% of your revenue pool, in retail, obviously. Okay? So you need to do something about it, because the customer you are owning today, and it will be your responsibility if you don't protect your franchises in the future from all these attackers.